111th Congress began its historic term today with a misreading of its own rules on who can be in the 111th Congress. Our fourth story tonight, breaking news in the lonely saga of the hypothetical Illinois Senator Roland Burris. Support from Dianne Feinstein, chair of the Senate Rules Committee. Why does that matter? Here's what happened today. First, Burris had to wait just to ask for his one job at the Senate today to make way for the arrival of a guy who's temporarily getting two jobs there this month, incoming Senator and soon-to-be Vice President Joe Biden. After a 20-minute meeting with the Secretary of the Senate, Burris was turned away but had to wait again, this time for the literally outgoing President of the Senate, Vice President Cheney. When Burris got outside, literally and figuratively, he explained why he was turned away from joining the fighting 111th.
Members of the media, my name is Roland Burris, the junior senator from the state of Illinois. I presented my credentials to the Secretary of the Senate and advised that my credentials were not in order and I would not be accepted, nor would I be seated, nor would I be permitted on the floor. And therefore, I am not seeking to have any type of confrontation. I will now consult with my attorneys and we will determine what our next step will be. Thank you all very much, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Specifically, the Secretary of the Senate said that Burris's certificate of appointment lacked the state seal and the signature of the Illinois Secretary of State, and therefore does not conform with Senate Rule 2, except that no, Rule 2 requires the Secretary of the Senate to enter in her records the signing Secretary of State's name, but it only recommends that the appointee actually gets that signature if they see fit, it reads. And in fact, Illinois law does not give the Secretary of State there the option of signing. That secretary is legally required to. Burris is set for talks with Senate Leader Harry Reid tomorrow, and the New York Times says Democrats expect this to end up with the Rules Committee, whose chair, Dianne Feinstein, tonight says Burris should be seated. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats also decided not to seat Senator Apparent Al Franken of Minnesota after the Republican governor there refused to certify his victory. Today's lawsuit by former Senator Norm Coleman challenging that victory triggers state law barring certification of any election with pending legal challenges. On Capitol Hill today, MSNBC political analyst Jonathan Alter, also, of course, senior editor at Newsweek magazine. John, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
Let's handle Franken before we get to Burris. The state law seems clear. He doesn't get certified until the lawsuits are resolved. It would make sense that the Senate would not seat him. Right. It seems too simple. I'm missing something, aren't I?
Yeah, to get the mood on Capitol Hill today, yeah, you would think that there would have been two confrontations, but Al Franken decided not to come to Washington today. I think it was under some consideration. But he realized that actually there's about a week, according to Minnesota state law, for some of this to get resolved. Of course, the High Court of Minnesota has sided with Franken every step of the way. It is a bipartisan court, but it's expected not to reverse itself. And so there is every indication that Franken will be seated. This thing is not going to turn around in Minnesota. All
right, to Illinois. Rod Blagojevich has been convicted of no crime. He's still the governor, hasn't been impeached. He is empowered by state law and by the U.S. Constitution to fill a Senate vacancy, wacky or not. And even if the choice is wacky or not and continually introducing himself to everybody, is there any other interpretation than that legally Burris is in the right here?
Well, if you talk to people in Harry Reid's office and in the Senate, you would say, yes, there is another interpretation that has to do with the Senate's interpretation not only of its rules, but also of its customs. You know, in the Senate, everything is not so cut and dried and legalistic. A lot of it has to do with traditions, and they indicate that in the past they've required the John Hancock of the Secretary of State of all 50 states on a piece of paper before somebody is seated. Now, whether that turns out to be fully accurate or not, when people look more closely at it, who knows? But they're in a pickle here, and it's a pretty amusing one for those of us who remember Roland Burris going back to the 1970s when I first met him in Chicago, and he was Casper Milquetoast of Illinois politics, and here he is in one of the most dramatic, showdowns in recent Washington history. I was with a cameraman out there today, Keith, and he said that this was the biggest cluster F since Monica Lewinsky. You know, this was a big dramatic deal today when they had that little standoff outside the Capitol.
Or as I suggested, the greatest excitement in the Senate since the caning of Senator Sumner. But the overall point here, no matter what Harry Reid thinks or whatever their interpretation in the Senate, at what point do they have to cut their losses because this begins to look ridiculous?
Well, I think we're well into ridiculous. Yeah. We're not at the beginning of it. They're having this meeting tomorrow morning. There are the outlines of a deal. I have no indication as to whether this will take place, but there are a lot of rumors about it, that in exchange for agreeing not to seek a full term in 2010, that Roland Burris would agree, would be seated, but that he would not run for election, and that Dick Durbin, who will be in this meeting tomorrow morning, would essentially broker that deal.
We'll see. Every other deal has gone south. Jonathan Alter of Newsweek and MSNBC on the Milquetoast beat. Great thanks, John.
Thanks, Keith.